Hello, Chris Lee here with Southeastern 14 here to preview and predict Tennessee's road trip to Gainesville, Florida for a 3-game baseball series with the Gators. That's going to start Thursday night. We will give you both sides of the preview from both teams' perspective in just a moment. Before we do, a reminder, our content brought to you by BetOnline, your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, the NBA, and NHL playoffs. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to BetOnline today. Use your mobile device to get in on all the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Well, let's start with the visiting Vols and their hitting and how it matches up with Florida's pitching. Tennessee, I think, is leading the country in runs scored. I have not fact-checked that as I'm doing this Thursday morning. But if the Vols aren't there, they're close. Now, having said that, offense has been scuffling a little bit. Tennessee scored 2 runs in each of its final 2 games. Or 3 runs in each of its final 2 games against Missouri. Still won the series because the pitching was good, and then was beaten, I think, 9-5, 9-6, something like that by Lipscomb in the midweek. Tennessee now heads on the road to Gainesville, where it is 6-4 on the road this year. And frankly, Tennessee played well on the road last year down the stretch when it was away from Knoxville and still advanced by winning a super regional at Southern Miss and a regional at Clemson. So keep that in mind. The Vols been a pretty good road team of late. The hitting, boy, you look at the numbers here. Tennessee's got 5 guys with 14 home runs or more. That's Kavaris Tears, Blake Burke, Christian Moore, who leads them with 20, Billy Amick, who's got 17 and hit Tennessee's last home run in that loss to Lipscomb, and he's even missed some time this year. And Dylan Dryling's got 18. Now, look, that's far from all they've got. Dean Curley, their freshman shortstop's got 9 bombs and is slugging nearly 600. So this is a team that up and down the lineup, boy, they hit for power. You've got double-digit walk rates across the board. Hunter Inslee, really the only guy in that lineup, doesn't walk a lot. And Cal Stark, when he catches, those guys under 10% walk rates. But you've got guys like Dreiling, 18% walk rate, Tears, 18%. Not only do they hit it out of the park, but they make you throw a lot of pitches. And that's kind of a difficult combination to pitch to, when you can both hit it out of the park and make other guys throw a lot of pitches and take free passes that way. Florida's pitching has been a bit of a mess this year, and that kind of happens when you've got a bunch of freshmen, and they've got a bunch of freshmen who pitch. These are guys that have had major roles for them and have thrown at least 10 innings who are freshmen. Luke McNeely, Liam Peterson, Alex Philpott, Grayson Smith, Frank Menendez, and Robert Sadden also has thrown some innings too. He's thrown about 8 1/3. All those guys are freshmen. So it is tough to pitch in this league under any circumstance right now, but it is tough to do it as freshmen. But you've seen some signs of encouragement out of that Gator pitching staff lately. These are all talented guys who pitch pretty well. And you're also seeing some things with some other guys emerging. Pierce Coppola in that Saturday role, he's a guy who's missed 2 years. And his first few starts have not been great. But last week against Arkansas, I think he went 3 innings, struck out 6, gave up either 0 or no home runs. I don't remember at the moment. But this is a big kid, big lefty, hard-throwing kid who would have been very high in the Major League Baseball draft a couple of years ago. I would presume he will go in that 2-hole on Friday. Jack Caglione is their number 3, who's been their best pitcher this season with a 4.10 ERA, although he struggled a little bit of late. And then you got Brandon Neely in that Friday spot, which will be Thursday this week. He's been pretty good. He's been off and on, has struggled some lately. Basically, other than about 4 or 5 pitchers in this league who's not struggled in this league, and that might even be too high of a number. But they're starting to get some things. You've got some talented guys who've been hot and cold. You got Cade Fisher, Ryan Slater, both in that category. But Florida's got a lot of talented arms, and one I'm really watching in particular, this has probably been their best guy pitch for pitch, Fisher Jameson, the right-hander. This is a predominantly lefty-heavy staff. Coppola, Caglione, McNeely, Fisher, Menendez, all lefties. So the only rotation guy they've got that's a righty is Brandon Neely. But watch for Fisher Jameson. He's been really good when he's thrown lately, and a staff that feels like it has started to improve a little bit. And Tennessee is a very balanced lineup. You got Burks a lefty, Dryling's a lefty, Tiers is a lefty, Dalton Bargo off the bench, who plays a lot, is a lefty, and they've got Cannon Peebles, who's usually their starting catcher, who's a switch hitter. So Tennessee is really able to mix and match left-handed, right-handed, and that's going to be a challenge for Florida. All right, let's talk about the Gators lineup and facing Tennessee's pitching. All right, everybody knows about Jack Caglione. He's got 26 home runs this year, but Florida's also got 3 other guys with at least a dozen home runs. Tyler Shelnut, who's had some good weekends lately. Ty Evans, who's been probably the second best hitter behind Jack Caglione. And Colby Shelton, the shortstop transfer from Alabama, who's got 15 home runs. But the other numbers have been a little bit underwhelming for what you would expect from Colby Shelton. But still, he is a kid who can take the ball out of the park anytime, anywhere. Now, they got some injury situations. You've got, I think, Jalen Guy's maybe been playing some left field for them just because of injuries. They've had a couple of guys here and there that have been hurt. That's caused Shelton, I think, to move over to third. Shelnut to move over to third. Their outfield has been very hit and miss in terms of production. Michael Robertson has not given them quite what they wanted. Yost is starting in left now, Hayden Yost, and has been playing pretty well of late. But, you know, it's a lineup that the bottom half can be pitched around or pitched to. And I'm not saying you can pitch around Jack Caglione with some of the lineup protection, but it gets a little bit easier to pitch to once you get down the lineup. And of course, anybody's is. But the bottom of Tennessee's lineup definitely stronger than the bottom of Florida's. But you've seen a guy to here and there emerge. Brody Donay, the transfer from Virginia Tech, has done some things too. He'll get some starts behind the plate in place of Luke Heyman, or he'll DH. So it's a very good Florida lineup. They're closing in on 100 home runs, which I'm going to guess puts them top 10 nationally. So for Tennessee, I think the key will be keeping the ball in the park. I feel like that's the key in any series this year in the SEC. But Drew Beam is probably their best starter at doing that. He's got a 3% home run rate. Drew Beam, since he's been a freshman, he's now a junior, has been a kid who is not overpowering, but he doesn't put a lot of guys on base. He's got a 6% free pass rate, and they keep the ball in the park, which is really good when you play most of your games in Lindsey Nelson Stadium, but also balls are getting out other places too. So Drew Beam, I think that the number 2 guy, and I would presume he'll go up against Coppola. That's probably the key game to watch in terms of the pitching. Xander Seacrest, I would presume, will go in game 3. And game 1, they've been going AJ Causey, but sometimes they will use an opener. That could be Chris Stamos, who's been used in that spot before, the lefty. The game 1 for Tennessee has been where they've done some interesting things. Sometimes it's not always been pretty. Causey's a kid who's been kind of hit or miss, does not walk a lot of guys, has a high strikeout rate, but also gives up a good number of home runs. So keep an eye on that. He's been very up and down. If they get a good start out of him, then Florida's in a little bit of trouble, I would think, because that Friday night game, although the Gators have had trouble winning that one, might be your best chance to get Tennessee. The bullpen is pretty good. Nate Snead, Wichita State transfer, has done a really good job in giving him a lot of innings. He's thrown 46 innings this year. They'll lean on Aaron Combs a lot, who's one of their better arms. Andrew Binke, lefty, they'll use him in spots. He's one of their best guys in terms of keeping guys off base. I mean, this is a pretty deep bullpen. Kirby Connell, the lefty who's been there forever, has been the guy that they've been using to close lately. He's not a dominant guy. He's had issues keeping the ball in the park, but he's also got a high ground ball rate. So it seems like when you get it in the air against him, you got a chance to get it out, but he's also a heavy ground ball tilt. So kind of a weird dynamic there for Kirby Connell. But they've got a lot of guys here. They've got Dylan Lloyd they'll use maybe out of the bullpen some, although he's been used in a midweek role. Derek Schaefer, Marcus Phillips, another couple of guys you could see this weekend. I think Tennessee's got the edge on quality pitching depth for sure, looking at the stat sheet. But Florida's also played probably a little bit tougher schedule. And again, it's got a younger staff. All right, as for a prediction, as I said earlier, Tennessee's played pretty well on the road over the last, this year and the last probably month of last season, when again Tennessee went on the road and earned its way into Omaha while playing in 2 other ballparks. I think that's a factor. I think Florida's played better lately. It might not always show up in the wins and losses. In fact, Florida lost the last 3 series. They've won 1 game. That's always game 3 against South Carolina, at Vandy, and at Arkansas. But that's a brutal schedule. I don't know any team in the country, save maybe Auburn, has had a rougher run of late in terms of schedule. And one other thing with the Gators, they've started to win some midweek games. Remember, that was an issue, but they've now won 3 midweek games in a row. That's probably some testament to developing some pitching depth along the way. That's usually what those midweek games are about, is a war of pitching attrition. So Florida has won 3 midweek games in a row against Jacksonville, Stetson, and Florida Atlantic. That might be something to keep an eye on. Again, I'm not saying don't look at the stats and take them at face value somewhat, but you might want to consider that it feels like a few of these guys for Florida have gotten better lately. That said, I'm still taking Tennessee in the series. I think a sweep seems like a lot to bite off given Florida's improvement, and just a lineup that's, again, with Caglione and those other guys, Shelton, not an easy lineup to pitch to. Florida seems to be very adept at getting a game in every series. In fact, I'm looking, the Gators have pretty well done that, except the series at Missouri about a month ago. I don't know what happened in that one, but even then they lost a couple of close games. So I will take Tennessee to win the series. A sweep seems like a lot to bite off, but it's Tennessee. They're a top 5 team in the country also, so you never know. We'll be here to wrap it up probably on Sunday night when we've been doing live streams recently. We'll talk about everything that happened. We'll have power rankings again on Monday. Once we have gone through the whole schedule, we'll reshuffle the teams, see where they land. But anyway, looking forward to watching this Tennessee-Florida series, which again starts on Thursday night. I'm Chris Lee of Southeastern 14. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon with more Southeastern Conference baseball content.